Now we'll be talking about what should be the director of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine. That is the briefing which takes place with the support of the Renaissance Foundation. I invite Mr. Refat Chubarov, who is the head of the selection committee, which is to choose the director of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, and Mr. Yevhen Zakharov, secretary of the selection committee. Another speaker will join us, Mr. Josef Zissels. He will be a little late. He will join us a little later. You're welcome. Good afternoon. You all know that the selection committee on organizing the competition for holding the position of Anti-Corruption Bureau started its work on the 9th of January. We had 3 meetings. They all were in a transparent format. These meetings were broadcast online. Anyone can follow our work. I see that Josef Zissels is here already. He will join us. During 3 meetings, we approved the text of the announcement, and on the 12th, at night, publishing, when the text was published on the official website of the President of Ukraine, that started the competition itself. Our work, the work of 9 members, and the 9 members of this committee, and I would like to remind you what are these people. All of them are very famous. Mr. Yevhen Zakharov, who sits next to me, Mr. Yaroslav Gritsak, Professor Mr. Giovanni Kessler, Mr. Yevhen Mishchuk, Mr. Victor Musiyak, Josef Zissels, Ms. Alexandra Yanovska, and Mr. Yuri Butusov. And I am heading this committee, and that was approved by my colleagues. The 3 meetings were dedicated to the announcement, and I believe that we have found the possibility to support such wordings which would completely correspond the law which we have to apply, but that for that we needed to have some discussions open in public, and now we as practitioners having some difficulties, we are inspired that we will need to develop the changes and amendments to the law.
And recommend to some of the subjects of legislative initiatives to submit them to the Parliament of Ukraine. So I finish my introductory remarks with this, and I invite my colleagues to say whatever they want to tell you, and then we will answer your questions. Good afternoon. I want to remark that when we started to work, I looked more attentively at the law that we started to work with, and it turned out that the law is very incomplete, imperfect, and it requires a lot of changes. And for instance, the Articles 6, 7, and 13 that define qualification demands, requirements to the candidates, and they were not clear. Some of them were subject to double interpretation, and even the requirements to the procedure contained contradictions that had to be removed. So we devoted a special sit-in or part of a sit-in to this issue when we talked about the changes to the law that were necessary to hold the competition. We want to publish these amendments on the president's site and send them to the president and to the parliament so that the lawmakers introduce the changes that we suggest, because we cannot work without them. And we tried not to engage in political issues where you, of course, can have different ideas. One of them is whether our committee has to submit only one candidate to the president, and he will just confirm our choice, or the way it happens according to the law now, 3 candidates, out of which the president chooses one person and submits the candidates to the parliament, and if the parliament does not confirm this candidate, then he submits second candidate and then third, and if no one is confirmed by the parliament, then everything happens anew. So there's a trap for us. If there are no worthy candidates during the contest, and if only 1 or 2 candidates are selected, and we then will have a problem because we won't have 3 candidates as the law requires. So we suggest that the wording should be changed, that we submit not 3 candidates, but no more than 3 candidates. And this will solve the issue. If, for instance, we find only 1 or 2 persons worthy, then we will submit 1 or 2 candidates. I think that this is an absolutely necessary amendment in order to preclude the possibility where we submit a candidacy that we do not see fit. Besides, we also have to be more precise on the term of work, which should pertain for work not only in state bodies but also in public bodies. Also, work should be counted not only in Ukraine but in other countries as well, and international organizations. We have to be more precise as far as the participation of foreign nationals is concerned, and we also want to remove the contradiction where one of the article says, one of the sentences says that we should interview worthy candidates that we should select as a result of studying their documents, and another sentence says that we should select the candidates out of the number with whom we held the interview. We think that we should not discriminate the candidates while talking to some of them and not talking to others. And we want to have it in the law that the Commission talks to every candidate who fits the bill as far as the requirements of the contest are concerned. So I thought that this should be made clear, and you should know about this so that you understand that regrettably we have to deal with a very imperfect law, and there are 4 draft laws that embrace a much broader range of issues, but I don't talk about them now, because as a Commission we want to introduce changes only in the clauses that concern us directly. We have also agreed that the members of the commission would not look at the comment documents before the term of filing the documents are submitted. So all your questions about who the candidates are, you can abstain from even raising them. We decided that we would not talk about this. We would introduce it into our regulations, about which my colleague Josef Zissels will talk in detail. But even if we know the names of the candidates from the documents that we accept for the contest, we won't make them public. In particular, our foreign member, Mr. Kessler, insisted on this, and we agreed with him. I'll answer your questions later.
Good afternoon. I will not repeat what my colleagues have said already. I would like to mention that I now work on the draft regulations of the Commission, because we understand that certain things are to be regulated so that we understand what we do in this or that case. For example, we started receiving mail to the email address which is stated in the announcement, and someone has to answer that, one of the members of the Commission. And yesterday I suggested, and we discussed it with Mr. Chubarov, with the presidential administration, that we suggest that we'll be taking terms. We have a room in the presidential administration, that is the room of the committee, and every day one of the members of the committee will be there to answer emails which we receive. There are many questions. Some already submit applications. Probably they did not read attentively the announcement, because they believe they can send it by email. So we will refer them to the law politely. We'll remind about announcement. We'll make this announcement again so that people understand it better. Our task is to open a door as wide as possible for participation in the contest. We want to have as many candidates as possible. And we had a discussion about participation of foreigners. Though I know that Ukrainian society has different ideas about whether foreigners should work in the state bodies of Ukraine. That discussion is not just accidental, because Mr. Zakharov mentioned that that is not clearly stated in the law. And the law does not say that the candidate could be only the citizen of Ukraine. The director should be the citizen of Ukraine. But there's another norm. Article 13 says that the director, the person who has foreign citizenship, cannot be appointed as a director. But we know that about million citizens of Ukraine have different second passports, Canadian, and from other countries, and we have no chance to check it. Even the special checking of the credentials will not help us, because the person does not declare whether they have the second or the third passport. Also, when it comes to special check, the work of our committee is very transparent. Everything is done in online regime. I don't think that everyone will be able to watch it, because on Saturday, for example, for 8 hours we were arguing whether a foreigner can be a candidate or not. But the special check is not transparent. How will society check whether that was objective or not? That's the question to civil society, to legislator maybe, who can change something in the law. There's another problem which is connected to the law. the law says that there are some objective norms, 10 years of work in the profession, but we said that it should be 5 years working as a lawyer, but what about professionalism or moral qualities? They are included into the same list. How could that be objective? That is impossible. So based on our life experience, maybe using somehow our own channels of getting information from the society, because we have many people we know, we can get such information. We will make it public at the meeting of the committee so that it influences our decisions. But that is quite unclear sector of our work, and we would like to make it as objective as possible. And we will look at the possibility to introduce some additional questionnaires for the candidates, which will have the list of questions which will help us make the right choice. Well, actually, any people with such life experience, even we may be mistaken. That's not a tragedy. There are people who can correct it. We still have time. I don't think that we will have some candidates earlier than within 2 months, but we should not allow anyone to exercise any influence on us. I believe that is the main thing in the work of the committee. Once we agreed, I did not agree easily to this work, but I will not allow anyone to manipulate me. If I feel that there's any attempt to manipulate me as a member of the committee, then I will address the mass media and I will leave the committee. Thank you. When you ask questions, please state your names. Who are you asking? Your questions to...
So your questions, colleagues. You all talked about some problems that the law contains and your attempts to find a compromise to solve those contradictions, but what about if you want to change the law through the parliament, then this will require some time. Do you have any apprehension that you won't be able to solve those contradictions that can be appealed against? What can be a balance within the framework of the legislations that does exist? Everything that pertains to the organization and procedure of the contest, the law provides us with the right to start and complete this work. Everything that Mr. Zakharov was talking about, we had in mind for two reasons: not to protract the adoption of changes, and also to simplify the work of the Commission to make it more effective. This is why we wanted to see that suggestions from the Commission are regarded in the first turn, because this, of course, is one of the issues that, you know, we don't have any doubts that someone can appeal against the organization of the contest. I'm sure that we won't allow the emergence of the situation when the contest could be appealed against and cancelled, the results cancelled because of the court decision. If we have the situation when these conflict norms affect our work, we will have to stop and say that we won't be able to adopt a decision until those conflicting points are solved. We will lean exclusively on the law and we won't be thinking about political feasibility, which is one of the major problems of our today's situation, whenever many people want political feasibility rather than law. This is one of our major problems today. We won't allow for this. The announcement that we adopted does correspond to the law fully about the Bureau. Other questions? Excuse me, but did I understand you rightly, Mr. Chubarov, that within 2 months there will be a picture, an understandable picture, and there will be sort of a set of CVs about who the candidates are? We have said that the time scale is 30 days from the day of the first publication of the announcement. Within 3 days, we are working on the documents submitted so that the society gets information on who takes part in the contest. We talked about whether we will define for ourselves the day when we when we announce the results, but we decided against this so far because there's still a huge number of issues about, for instance, how many people will take part, what will the quality of those people be, I'm sorry to say. And, we all want to select those candidates as soon as possible and to submit them to the president if, of course, the law is not changed. And Mr. Zakharov has dwelt upon this in great detail. We very much want the director to be appointed as soon as possible, because the second stage, the creation of the bureau itself and the personnel for it, will all depend on the great authority invested with the director. So I don't think that our work will last for 2 months, but of course there are different ideas about this. Another question. Vasil Lubarets, Kievsky Obraz newspaper, and I'm also a public activist. And Maidan from Bila Tserkva has appointed me, named me a candidate for the office that we're talking about. So first of all, my gratitude to you for your stand, and especially for the words that you won't allow to manipulate yourself. On the other hand, I want to report to you that that people are already saying that this is a contest for the director of Corruption Bureau, not anti-corruption. Do you retain your candidature? Yes, I do. So my question is about the changes to the law, especially the requirements addressed to the candidate. As a public activist, I would tell you that there is one senseless requirement about 10 years of the term of work. How can we talk about this if we have not been fighting corruption? We just cannot find a person who would be engaged in this work for 10 years. And again, there's no requirement about the expectation of people. The requirement of a sacrificial active participation in the revolution and non-engagement in political and oligarchic influences.
Thank you. That is a simple question, but it's clearly stated in the law. 10 years of work as a specialist in law. It's not 10 years of work in the anti-corruption sphere. I don't know whether anyone would have such an experience. As to the sacrificial participation at Maidan, we will also take into account that. I would like to add, it's the experience in the sector of law, like the head of the lawyers union can participate in that, and he had never worked as fighting corruption. And the law says not less than 10 years of experience of work in the specialty, and not less than 5 years of work at the positions of leaders. But we believe that that is the leader anywhere in the state body, international organization, private companies in Ukraine, abroad. We believe we have the right to interpret it like that because that doesn't contradict the law, and it means that people we don't want to people who the society does not want to see as candidates to participate in it. Does your committee work and demonstrates transparency via online regime? Was it an initiative or is there some norm in the law? Are you ready to recommend the same approach to the Bureau itself? That is the norm of the law. The law says that all the meetings of the committee are open, and for them to be open, that was done this way. Online, video recording, and also it's on the website of the President of Ukraine. Anyone can see it. I need to state that the quality of video recording is not always good, especially the sound. For the future, that's quite a complicated issue. Then we need to discuss the qualities of the candidate, and I believe that if we do it with the cameras on, will result in us not be able to have an open discussion, because for me the human rights are important, but the privacy is also important, and I made the decision that I will not discuss the health of a person with the cameras with the cameras on, because I believe you cannot discuss such thing with cameras on. Allow me to add one more thing. As a chairperson, I would like to say that sometimes you have to get concentrated on addressing some issues, and you need to find such arguments which would be understandable, not just for colleagues, but for the society, for those who watch the online broadcasting. I do not know whether those who have the right of a legislative initiative will hear me, but thinking about how we work according to that regime which is stipulated by the law, I would say that some of the subjects of political and public life of Ukraine, according to the law, should also have their meetings open and transparent to the society. Now I see that all the political parties which are in the parliament, they should at least have all their congresses openly with online broadcasting, because they look at us as at those who they can manipulate, they can have influence on, So even though it's difficult to work with cameras on, but I like this idea. Thank you. We have one more question. Do we have time? And do we have time for one more question? Yeah, sure.
Mr. Zissels, the law was submitted by the administration of the president about the anti-corruption bureau, so it turns out that you were already manipulated by the president's administration, and after this you were invited. The law provides for this, and if the legislator decided that it is allowed to work within the administration of the president's building, then I see that this is provided for by the law, and the administration of the president only provides technical support. When I talk about manipulation, I talk about influence in our decisions, but of course we will be talked to, and there's a different weight of those people who influence, and we cannot allow for the guiding bodies of the country to decisively affect our work. We are delegated from the president, the cabinet of ministers, and the parliament. This does not mean that they can manage us or make us do something, command us. Look, we have to be sincere here and understand in a similar way. The law provides for a branch of state power that has to help the work of the contest commission. According to the law, this is the administration of the president, and this is stipulated by the parliament. But if you saw our last sitting, when we had a need to take counsel from the lawyers, but no one came to the room where we were holding our sitting. No one entered the room until they were invited. I do not at the moment feel attempts to influence or manipulate us, but I do not rule out a possibility that they will try to do this. We're not talking about someone specific now, but I'm talking in general terms. But the composition of the commission is such that if anyone thinks about this, let them not even try, because we are not the people who are to be influenced. Thank you very much, and we will wait for you with the new information about the results of the commission.